and welcome to a Know Your Startup edition of a VC Circle podcast. My name is Narinder Kapoor and I'm joined today by Samir Ramesh, one of the co-founders of EdTech startup MyCaptain. Samir, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, Samir, before we get into anything else, could you introduce us to MyCaptain? Could you tell us the story behind MyCaptain, how it came about?
Absolutely, Narinder. So MyCaptain started when I was in my second year of college. Me along with my friends, then co-founders now, started it because we faced a very particular problem. The problem was all of us had become engineers. I wanted to be a blogger myself. My friend wanted to be an astronomer, and another friend of ours wanted to be an economist and a writer. And we all realized that despite our varied interests, despite us being from all different parts of the country, all of us had ended up in engineering colleges pursuing streams we weren't interested in. And upon further observation, we noticed that it wasn't just few of us in it. Like the majority of our own batchmates, our juniors, our seniors, were all in the same boat. Most of them had ended up taking up streams that they didn't know why they took up and had no idea about what they wanted to pursue either. So noticing that, going through that problem ourselves, we realized that this is something that's pretty serious. Because if these students who are in college, who are in high school, do not know what they want to pursue, they're going to just follow the herd and end up, becoming another set of 6-point or 5-point someones. Whereas they may be the most talented photographers, writers, filmmakers, entrepreneurs the world could have ever seen. So we thought, why not solve this problem for everybody just like us? And so we started MyCaptain, where we would find these inspirational people we call captains, who are under the age of 30, who would guide and mentor the next set of students who want to pursue something in that field. So if you want to be a published author, there's no point in you talking to your English teacher about it. Might as well talk to a published author around your age and get advice on how the industry really works and what your first step should be. And that's kind of how MyCaptain started.
So what exactly then are the goals for the company? Is it if I wanted to become an author, for example, to take your example, if I wanted to become an author and I find a captain on your platform who is already a published author, will they just speak to me regarding, what the industry is like and how to get published? Or will there be a course component to this as well, wherein they will look at my writing or they will give assignments?
There is a course component. So how MyCaptain works is we have these online 30-day programs in which you're given recorded content that we create from our side, along with subject matter experts. You have live sessions with these mentors where you can interact with them, where you can ask them questions, where they'll be giving you tips and tricks. And also there's an aspect of projects. So all our workshops are designed around projects. So for example, if you're interested in becoming an author, by the end of the novel writing workshop at MyCaptain, you'd have written your first chapter and you'd have gotten feedback on it from your mentor. So that's how the entire system works, where, you're guided through it, basic skills, as well as given a real understanding of what it's like to be in the field. So that's how it works. Now, coming to the goals of the company, Narinder, so far what we have seen is that this is a pretty unexplored space in EdTech. A lot of people aren't looking at, alternate careers quite as seriously as they need to be. So our goal in the next 3 years is to reach 10 lakh students. That is 1 million students who sign up on MyCaptain and go through our courses. Because right now we've noticed that's how many people take up the IIT JEE entrance examinations. And we want to show that India is a country where you can get as many amazingly talented creators, designers, entrepreneurs, illustrators, music producers, and more, as many as there are engineers, or maybe more. So that's the goal that we have set for ourselves. And we want to be this online alternative to, traditional education systems that are there, where, students can come and learn what they're interested in. They can explore what their passions are in a safe space. And at the same time, also take the next step into it in terms of internships, projects, or even getting a job in it.
So then when you were setting up MyCaptain, what in the early days for you, what did you feel was the toughest hurdle for you and the company to jump? Was there any one particular or even a set of circumstances that at the time you felt, okay, this is the toughest thing we're going to come across while we're setting up the company?
Yeah, there were a lot of challenges in terms of what was the toughest. Um, I'd honestly say that because we started when we were in college,
Hmm.
uh, that was one of the most difficult things that we had to do because our parents weren't really sure of it. So that was a big challenge that we had to overcome, convincing our parents to let us go ahead with this as our first time, as our full time jobs.
Hmm.
And this being the first thing that we did, it was quite a bit difficult for them to convince them about it. But in terms of operational challenges and what the company faced, the biggest challenge initially was trying to identify what our product was. We initially started off as a magazine, then we evolved into, doing programs in schools. This is way back in 2015, but eventually we landed upon My Captain, and this gave us the confidence that we could go ahead. So finding the right solution to the problem we were trying to solve was one of the biggest steps we had to take.
But then on the other hand, there must have been things which you said, oh, this is not as tough as we expected. Oh, this is an extremely easy thing. Well, is there something that was extremely easy that you didn't at the time feel would be, but it turned out the other way around?
Yeah, it was honestly convincing or selling the vision of the startup to others around us,
Hmm.
especially our peers who wanted to join us in our early days or otherwise. The idea of being able to create this alternative safe space for students to pursue what they want to do instead of taking the traditional streams was in fact a very powerful vision. And when we spoke to other students, and not just students, but even a lot of people who had finished their education 10, 15 years ago, really connected with that vision. So yeah, the selling the vision and finding people who identified with it was one of the things that came most naturally to us.
But one follow up that I'd like to ask here is that you mentioned when I asked you about your toughest hurdle, you said initially defining the product, and now you say that selling that the vision of that product or selling the vision of the company was not at all difficult for you. Do you think that is the disconnect that you're trying to bridge?
Partially, because in a way, even though we were really connected to the problem and what we wanted to do,
Hmm.
we had to experiment and find out what the solution the market would want would be. So that's where a lot of time went into trying to identify how best can we solve this problem. And it took us a few years, but we eventually arrived upon it in a way that really worked out.
And in these few years, or even now, what do you feel is the best sort of operational or leadership management advice that either you or all three of you have received, whether it's about running the company, whether it's about the product itself?
Right. A couple of things. One was when we had just gone full time. We were pretty much fresh out of college,
Hmm.
and one of our mentors told us we have to set goals and chase growth.
Hmm.
So we had set upon 20% month on month growth, and whatever happens, we ensure that we hit those targets. So that was one of the first pieces of advice that helped us really buckle down and get into the real groove of things and also start growing as much as we wanted to do. So that was the best piece of advice that I've gotten.
And you operate. I want to pick up on one of the things you said earlier. You said that you operate in an extremely unexplored part of edtech. But because of all the things that we've gone through this year, edtech has become one of the most uh, popular concepts, both for corporates, investors, as well as the general public. EdTech is a large industry. Is there any one particular thing that you would say is a pet peeve of yours or for My Captain about the industry or the startup ecosystem in general that you all have?
I have a lot of complaints about education. I think that's kind of where I got here. My biggest, thing that I've noticed when it comes to education is uh, people try to make it much more formal and serious than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Uh, I believe education and more importantly, learning is one of the most fun activities anybody ever does. Be it whether you're learning to play a new song on your guitar or learning to sing or even for that matter, learning to ride a bike. That's one of the most enjoyable activities that are there. And the amount of stress that's put on everybody to learn and to get marks, etc., takes the fun away from learning. And what I've noticed is, and this is again a philosophy at My Captain, we try to make the learning itself fun so that when you're doing it, it becomes an experience that you go through. It's something that you enjoy. And one of the things that I really believe in is, you can forget a lot of facts and information that's thrown at your head, like what you learned in 8th standard biology, let's say. But you will never forget the feeling that you had or the experience that you have when you're about to bungee jump for the first time. So education should be about creating those experiences for the learners.
And I'm glad you mentioned philosophy, because that's the next question that I wanted to come to you about. What is the work-life balance philosophy that you follow? I mean, we always hear that startups are burning the midnight oil, full work nights for months, years in a row. What is the sort of work-life balance for My Captain and its team?
Initially, yes, it was pretty hectic. We made sure we did what we had to do, is what we kept telling ourselves. Yes, we could have found better work-life balance in the earlier years, but we were young, we were foolish, and we were hungry. We wanted to do it. So that kept us going. But today we realize the importance of balancing our mental health, our physical health, and giving time for ourselves apart from work. So right now there are a lot of different things that each of us do. Like, for example, I'm getting into music. So I've been playing the guitar for the past 5-6 years. So I'm trying to spend a lot of time doing that. And so I'm trying to find different hobbies, different ways to cut myself off of work, even though work and home are pretty much the same location right now. So being able to, say that if I'm holding a guitar in my hand, it's not work. My work thoughts are off. Is kind of, what helps create sort of a balance.
And is that something that your other co-founders are also following, albeit to a different degree?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody has their own interest and has their own passion. Rohan was the one who wanted to be a writer. So he's the chief marketing officer with us. So he spends his time writing poetry as well. So yeah, we find ways to engage our minds in completely unrelated and disconnected activities.
And before I come to my final question for you, I'd be remiss if I did not ask you about the impact that COVID-19 has had on your company. What is the sort of, from a user perspective, what is the sort of impact that COVID-19's had? Because whenever I've spoken to any other edtech company, we just hear, it's a bad thing, COVID-19, but it's really accelerated things for us. So is it the same for you? Is there some other way of looking at it?
While, people often compare COVID, the pandemic, to what demonetization did for fintech startups in India. But yes, there are good things that have come out of it in terms of how the user base has, etc., grown for us as an edtech company. And the behaviors that we have seen is people are a lot more willing to explore various different interests. And one of the most interesting things that we spotted, especially during this months of June and July, was a lot of people who were in their mid-30s and 40s ended up taking up courses like photography and creative writing with us, because they wanted a chance again to pursue the passions that they had lost. So that was something interesting that we noticed, that if given a chance, if people, found out about it, everybody has that little niggling thing. They were like, I wish I'd done that. And I think that's really beautiful.
And that is actually a great segue for my final question for you, which I'm sure the answer to is yes, but I still want you to elaborate on it. Do you consider yourself an idealist? Because and obviously the answer is probably yes, but how do you retain it, considering all that's happened this past year and maybe even before, and what may come after? And in that context, what do you hope from the future, both for yourself and for My Captain?
Yeah, you're right. I'm absolutely an idealist. I wouldn't have had the courage to take the leap right out of undergraduate college had I not been an idealist. So yes, the way I retain hope is, well, it's kind of like what I want to achieve and what the kind of impact My Captain wants to create. Like I said, we want to create a platform where tens of lakhs of students can take up an option of exploring and pursuing alternate careers. And when we really achieve that, we know that the societal mindset would have shifted, would have moved in such a strong way that we would know the difference that it's making. We would be able to see the difference in the people around us. And we know that that's possible. Having gone through the problem, wanting to solve it, and putting so many of our best years into it, waiting for that day, waiting for that to eventually happen is what keeps me and the rest of my captain going.
And is that something that you've noticed since you started My Captain? You went through that problem, you came out of it, and you set up a company saying, okay, we're going to try solving this for everyone else. Now, when you look back after all these years and you look at the perceptions and the attitudes, not just of your target audience per se, but that of their parents as well, do you feel those attitudes that were there when you started are slowly starting to shift in a more positive direction?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not for amongst the people who've taken up our programs at My Captain, we've seen hundreds of students publish their own novels. These are 18, 19-year-olds. You've seen so many of them start up, and some of them have gotten funded. Mm-hmm. Some of them are even getting mentored in NSR-CLI in Bangalore. Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of impact happening through what we do. But it's not just through what we do. Like, society itself is changing. So a city like Nagpur, where Zishan and I lived, Zishan from Nagpur, I've lived there for about 8 years. And we've seen that city evolve from a very traditional conservative place to a booming city with a lot of life, with a lot of energy, especially amongst youngsters. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I noticed was in a city like Chennai, where it is going to be largely people who push towards the IT and the computer science side of things. When we asked students all the way from 6th grade to college what they wanted to pursue, hardly any of them said engineers or doctors. So it's like everything is shifting. There is it's slow, but there is a strong shift towards different careers and different options that people want to explore. And it's not just in tier 1 cities, even in tier 2 cities and even tier 3 cities like Salem, which is a few kilometers away from Coimbatore and Bangalore. That's a city where in an engineering college over there, we had 200 students sign up for a psychology workshop. So we see that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of passion and aspiration amongst students everywhere. And I think it's just shifting in the right direction for all of them and us.
Well, I think that's as positive a note as any to end this conversation on. Sameer, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.